Right. So picture this. You're Keir Starmer. You finally made it to number 10. You're probably still figuring out where they keep the good biscuits. And suddenly Israel's basically sliding into your DM saying, recognize Palestine, and we might have to break up. I mean, talk about relationship drama on a geopolitical scale. But here's the kicker. This isn't just some diplomatic tantrum. We're talking about intelligence sharing that has literally saved British lives, and Netanyahu's basically threatening to turn off the tap. So buckle up, because today we're diving into the most high-stakes game of political chicken you've ever seen, and the consequences could be absolutely massive. Now, before we get into the juicy details, let me paint you a picture of just how intertwined Britain and Israel's security relationship really is. We're not talking about sharing holiday photos here. We're talking about Mossad, Israel's equivalent of MI6, basically being Britain's eyes and ears in one of the world's most volatile regions. These aren't your average WhatsApp messages between allies. These are intelligence briefings that have thwarted terrorist plots on British soil. Remember that massive counter-terrorism operation targeting an alleged Iranian-linked plot against the Israeli embassy in London? Yeah, that was thanks to Israeli intelligence. The kind of operation that involved the largest counter-terrorism raids the UK has seen in recent years. So when Netanyahu starts making threats about cutting security ties, it's not just diplomatic posturing, it's potentially putting British lives at risk. But here's where it gets really spicy. According to diplomatic sources, this isn't just Netanyahu having a bit of sulk. This is calculated political pressure designed to make Starmer think twice about his Palestine recognition plans. And let's be honest, it's pretty effective leverage. One Israeli diplomat basically laid it out with the subtlety of a brick through a window. London needs to be careful because Bibi and his ministers have cards they could play too. Translation: we've been keeping you safe, and we can stop anytime we like. It's like your mate who always pays for dinner suddenly suggesting you might want to start bringing your wallet. Now, let's talk about how we got here, because this whole situation didn't just materialize out of thin air like some sort of diplomatic magic trick. Starmer's announcement about potentially recognizing Palestine later this year sent shockwaves through Israeli political circles faster than you can say two-state solution. Netanyahu didn't just disapprove. He went full theatrical mode, declaring that Starmer's proposal rewards Hamas's monstrous terrorism and punishes its victims. He even threw in that classic line about how a jihadist state on Israel's border today will threaten Britain tomorrow. I mean, you've got to admire the dramatic flair, even if the messaging is about as subtle as a sledgehammer to the face. But here's what makes this particularly fascinating from a UK politics perspective. Many observers are saying Starmer was essentially backed into this corner by his own backbenchers. You know how it is in Labour. Try to occupy the centre ground, and suddenly half your MPs are acting like you personally betrayed the revolutionary cause. It's like being stuck between a rock and a hard place, except the rock is Israeli diplomatic pressure, and the hard place is your own party threatening rebellion. Starmer's trying to navigate this minefield while keeping everyone happy, which, let's be honest, is about as likely as finding a unicorn in a Greggs. And speaking of reactions, let's talk about who was absolutely chuffed with Starmer's announcement. Hamas. Yes, you heard that right. The terrorist organization that's still holding Israeli hostages from their October 2023 attack basically rolled out the red carpet for Starmer's Palestine recognition plans. A senior Hamas official said it meant victory and liberation are closer than we expected. Now, I don't know about you, but when a terrorist group is celebrating your policy announcements, it might be time to take a long, hard look in the mirror and ask some serious questions about your political positioning. But let's zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture here, because this isn't just about Britain and Israel having a diplomatic spat. This is part of a broader European shift, with France and Canada also announcing intentions to recognize Palestine. It's like a domino effect, but instead of tiles falling over, it's Western nations potentially reshaping Middle Eastern diplomacy. The Israelis are clearly rattled by this coordinated approach, hence the warnings to multiple countries about carefully considering the consequences. It's diplomatic speak for, you really don't want to test us on this one. Now, here's where it gets really interesting from a practical standpoint. Israel's intelligence sharing with the UK isn't just some nice-to-have diplomatic courtesy. It's absolutely crucial for British national security. We're talking about information that has prevented terrorist attacks, disrupted Iranian influence operations, and kept British citizens safe both at home and abroad. The Mossad MI6 relationship is one of those behind-the-scenes partnerships that the public rarely hears about, but is absolutely vital for maintaining security. So when Netanyahu starts threatening to withdraw that cooperation, he's essentially holding British public safety hostage to his political objectives. And let's be brutally honest about the timing here. This threat comes at a moment when Britain's security services are already stretched thin, dealing with threats from multiple directions. We've got ongoing concerns about Russian espionage, Chinese infiltration, Iranian proxy activities, and homegrown terrorism. Losing Israeli intelligence cooperation wouldn't just be inconvenient. It could be genuinely dangerous. It's like trying to do a jigsaw puzzle when someone's threatening to take away half the pieces. But here's the thing that makes Starmer's position particularly precarious. He's essentially being squeezed from 3 different directions simultaneously. On one side, you've got Israeli diplomatic pressure backed by very real security implications. On another side, you've got his own backbenchers pushing him towards more pro-Palestinian positions. And on the third side, you've got public opinion, which is increasingly sympathetic to Palestinian suffering in Gaza. It's like trying to juggle flaming torches while riding a unicycle on a tightrope. Impressive if you can pull it off, but the consequences of dropping the ball are pretty catastrophic. The really fascinating aspect of this whole drama is how it exposes a fundamental tension in modern British foreign policy. We want to be seen as supporting human rights and international law, which would suggest supporting Palestinian statehood. But we also need practical security cooperation with Israel to keep British citizens safe. It's the classic dilemma between idealistic foreign policy goals and cold, hard pragmatic necessities. And Netanyahu's basically forcing Starmer to choose between them. What makes this even more complicated is a domestic political calculation for Starmer. His constituency isn't just his MPs, it's also Labour voters, many of whom are increasingly critical of Israeli actions in Gaza. The images coming out of the conflict have been absolutely devastating, and public sympathy for Palestinian civilians is at an all-time high. So Starmer's under enormous pressure to be seen doing something, even if that something might ultimately compromise British security interests. It's like being trapped between doing what looks right and doing what might actually be right, and they are not necessarily the same thing. But let's talk about Netanyahu's strategy here, because this isn't just emotional decision-making. This is calculated political pressure designed to influence British policy. By threatening to withdraw security cooperation, Netanyahu's essentially weaponizing Israel's intelligence capabilities to maintain political support. It's a high-stakes game of diplomatic poker, and is betting that Starmer will fold rather than risk British lives. And you know what? It might actually work, because the political cost of a terrorist attack that could have been prevented with Israeli intelligence would be absolutely devastating for any government. The broader implications of this standoff extend far beyond just UK-Israel relations. We're potentially looking at a fundamental reshaping of how Western nations approach the Middle East conflict. If countries like Britain, France, and Canada all proceed with Palestinian recognition despite Israeli threats, it could signal a major shift in the diplomatic balance. Alternatively, if they back down in the face of Israeli pressure, it would demonstrate the continuing power of security cooperation as a diplomatic weapon. Here's what really gets me about this whole situation. It perfectly encapsulates the impossible nature of modern political leadership. Starmer's trying to balance party pressure, public opinion, international law, national security, and diplomatic relationships all at the same time. It's like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube while someone's shouting conflicting instructions at you from 5 different directions. And whatever decision he makes, someone's going to be absolutely furious about it. The human cost dimension of this dispute can't be ignored either. We're talking about real people's lives and safety on multiple levels. Palestinian civilians in Gaza, Israeli citizens under threat, British people who could be targeted by terrorists, and hostages still being held by Hamas. Every political calculation and diplomatic maneuver ultimately comes back to these human realities, which makes the stakes incredibly high for everyone involved. What's particularly striking is how this crisis reveals the interconnected nature of modern international relations. A decision about Palestinian recognition doesn't just affect Palestine and Israel. It ripples through security arrangements, intelligence sharing, diplomatic relationships, and domestic politics across multiple countries. It's like pulling one thread and watching an entire tapestry unravel. So where does this leave us? Well, Starmer's basically got to choose between potentially compromising British security and potentially facing a backbench rebellion. Netanyahu's gambling that the security threat will be enough to change British policy. And meanwhile, Palestinian civilians continue to suffer while this high-stakes diplomatic game plays out. It's a situation where there are no easy answers, no clear winners, and potentially very serious consequences whatever happens. The next few months are going to be absolutely crucial in determining how this plays out. Will Starmer stick to his Palestine recognition plans despite Israeli threats? Will Netanyahu actually follow through on cutting security ties? And what will be the long-term implications for British foreign policy and national security? One thing's for certain. This is far from over, and the consequences will be felt for years to come. Thanks for watching UK Pancakes, and I'll see you in the next one where we'll probably be dealing with whatever fresh political chaos has erupted by then.